So guys, whilst we wait for more Renegades news, I'm going to be making some videos going over some theory crafted builds for the brand new exotic armor pieces coming with Renegades. Today's video is going to be focused on the Warlock exotic helmet Deimosuffusion, but tomorrow and Monday I'll have videos on the Hunter exotic boots Fortune's Favor and the Titan exotic chest piece Prismatic Vestment. But with that said, let's go over the brand new Warlock helmet, what it does and what build I have in mind for when the expansion launches. So, the exotic Warlock helmet is called Deimosuffusion and states that while a Strand super is equipped, casting your Rift will suspend nearby enemies. Suspend deals damage over time and healing you in the process. Combatants who break free from Suspend suffer additional damage, and defeating suspended targets heals you a moderate amount. Editor's note, this originally said it would suspend combatants, but this is actually suspend both combatants and players. So that's the description that we have for Deimos Fusion. In my opinion, this is probably going to be one of the most broken Warlock exotics in the entire game, especially when we pair it with this build I have in mind on Strand Warlock. Now, whilst you can use this helmet on a prismatic build, you have way more options for suspend here on the actual Strand subclass itself compared to prismatic. So that's why we're using Strand here. Now, for the actual parts of this build, obviously for the super we need to use Needle Storm because there are no other options, and for the base abilities I'm choosing to use Healing Rift for even more survivability, although you can use Empowering Rift if you want to be getting more ability regeneration, more ammo generation, and just an increase to your overall damage, which is overall really good. So you can pick whichever one you want. For your jump, personal preference, but I recommend Burst Glide as it's just the best jump on Warlock. For melee, you have Arcane Needle as your only option, and for the grenade, we are using the Shackle Grenade due to it being able to suspend targets very easily. Now, for the main aspects, main one I'm going to recommend that you guys have to use with this build is going to be Weaver's Call. This thing states that activating your class ability, which is your Rift, you'll weave 3 Threadlings and deploy any Threadlings you have perched. Also, dealing damage and defeating targets generates perched Threadlings. So this is going to be just a free way of you being able to generate Threadlings with this build, and will allow your Rift to generate Threadlings alongside suspend enemies. And one thing to note about this aspect that it doesn't actually mention in the description is that your Threadlings, whenever they deal damage, will return a small amount of class ability energy to you, so it's going to be just a very worthwhile aspect to use. Now for the second one, this is where you can kind of choose depending on which aspect you prefer. I am personally going to be testing out the Wanderer when Renegades launches, due to it being able to allow your Tangles to suspend targets, and Threadling Final Blows will generate Tangles. But if you want to use something like Mind Spun Invocation instead with the Shackle Grenade, you actually could, because this will allow you to consume your Shackle Grenade and activate Weaver's Trance, where Final Blows, while Weaver's Trance is active, create a suspending detonation. Now, whilst both of these are really good, I personally find the Weaver's Trance suspending detonation to be quite small compared to what a Wanderer Tangle is able to do. Also, because you're going to be generating Tangles a whole lot, having them be able to suspend targets is just a really good option. And if it turns out that you don't need another way of suspending because you already have so many, you could instead run a grapple grenade and use the cool interaction that the Wanderer provides to just fling yourself across far distances, which is very enjoyable. Now, that said, I will be testing out Mind Spun Invocation as well once the expansion launches to test out which one works best, but I am personally leaning more towards the Wanderer here. Now, for the fragments, the first one that you are definitely going to want to have is Thread of Continuity. This will allow your Suspend, Unravel, and Sever effects applied to targets to have an increased duration. I believe this increases the duration of a Suspend to about 10 seconds, where it's normally about like 7, so it's not a big increase, but it's still an increase nonetheless. Alongside that, Thread of Mind is going to be very good, where defeating suspended targets grants class ability energy. It's going to be a no-brainer, must-have fragment there. Then we're also using Thread of Wisdom, where defeating a suspended target creates an Orb of Power. This is going to be very good. And then finally, we are of course using Thread of Generation, so that whenever we deal damage with literally anything, we're going to be granting ourselves more grenade energy. Now, if you're okay with not having your grenade constantly available, you could swap this out for Thread of Warding, where picking up an Orb of Power will grant you Woven Mail if you need some extra survivability. But considering that the exotic helmet will be healing us whenever we defeat a suspended target, I feel like we'll be fine on survivability, so I've opted for Thread of Generation instead, so we can get more Shackle Grenades out. Now, that is everything for the actual subclass, but there actually are some weapon recommendations I have as well. The first one is going to be a weapon that you can very easily get your hands on right now, as well as the catalyst for the weapon, which I highly recommend you guys go and get, and that is the new Malpace exotic rocket pulse rifle. Now, why am I recommending this? Well, it's because its intrinsic trait, first atomizing rounds fired embed themselves into targets, and long press will enable them to detonate, and detonating them will suspend targets if enough of these rockets are actually on the same target. So it's a free way of suspending, and the catalyst will allow these explosions to actually unravel targets, which is very good. So you have free unravel and a free suspend here just on your exotic weapon. But if you don't like rocket pulses and are more a fan of bows, you can in fact use the Wish Keeper, I believe it's called, which is a strand damage type exotic bow, which would also work very well. Its first intrinsic trait is Snare Weaver, where precision hits and final blows build energy towards a Snare Weaver arrow that can be fired from the hip. On impact, these arrows create a pattern of traps that suspend nearby targets. So this is just a free way of also being able to suspend targets. If you're more a fan of bows, this weapon is going to be very strong with how quickly you're able to suspend targets with it, and just the helmet as well, pairing it with this weapon, free healing constantly, which is going to be really good. And then just some final things to note about the stats you're going to want to have. Obviously, having a good enough class ability stat is going to be very worth it. I currently have about 60 odd class ability stat on this build without any exotic. I'm hoping that when I get my hands on Deimosuffusion, I can get a class archetype roll, so then I can boost that to potentially around 100 at least, so that then the cooldown is as fast as possible. Then I'm obviously going to be focusing on probably my grenade and super stats as well, just because I personally like those. But the main stat you're going to want to focus on for this build in particular is definitely your class, and at least getting that to 100 in that stat. If you go over that stat, your class ability will also be providing you with an overshield whenever you use it, which is very good. But with the healing rift, if you just stand in it for long enough, you'll eventually get that overshield anyway, so it's not really all that necessary. But class is definitely going to be the stat you're going to want to focus on, and then once again, I'm just going with grenade and super as they're my preferred favorite stats. You could go into weapons as well if you just want that free buff there, but health and melee probably aren't going to be all that necessary. Now, whilst I think this build is going to be very strong on paper, we do not have the exotic helmet in-game right now to actually playtest. So once the expansion launches, I will of course be diving headfirst into it and be testing out all possible builds with it to see how good it actually is. On paper, with it being able to heal you upon defeating a suspended target and cause damage over time to suspended targets, I am very interested in trying it out, and I'm hoping that it is really good. Now, obviously, we do also not know about the upcoming sandbox changes in terms of abilities, so we don't know if anything within the Strand's Warlock subclass is going to be nerfed or buffed in any way. Due to Strand Warlock recently receiving some buffs, I would doubt that they would really nerf anything right now, especially with a brand new Strand exotic coming, but we'll obviously have to wait and see and get confirmation on that probably in the next couple of weeks. So if you guys want to stay up to date on everything coming with Destiny 2 Renegades, be sure to stay subscribed to this channel. And if you've enjoyed the video, if you could leave a like as well, I would very much appreciate it. And with that all said, that's all I have for you guys today. Hopefully you once again have enjoyed, and I'll see you all in the next one.